I have 6 phenomenal SaaS stories today, straight from founders. I'm going to cover different stories from a founder who generated $12K in just 4 months with no paid ads, to how another founder bootstrapped their side hustle to $10,000 a month. I really think you'll like number 5 here, so make sure you stay into the end of the video. Let's dive straight into our first story here. This comes from Lucas Herman, who's the founder of Stagetimer. They bootstrapped their SaaS to $10K a month with just 2 employees. So before diving into the history of the project and the lessons they learned, let's take a look at what this SaaS does. So it's a remote controlled countdown timer. It's trusted by over 8,000 video producers, so you can keep your event on track with an accurate countdown timer and then communicate this to your talent. So it's really meant for any type of production. It's got some great reviews here from Luke. They're keeping themselves on schedule for teaching online and in person. It also hit number 1 on Product Hunt of the Day, which is an achievement in itself. So let's take a look at how this started. So they started their journey as a software developer in a startup. Before that, they had experience in freelancing, and they realized the limitations of trading time for money. They aspired to create something more scalable. That's when they had the idea for a timer tool. So this spark for this tool came from working with a friend who operated a recording studio. They noticed a recurring issue, the need for a timer to synchronize recordings. They searched online for a web-based timer solution, but they couldn't find anything that suited their needs. This prompted them to take action, so they created a really simple tool, shared it on Reddit, and they got positive feedback from this response. So this is a great way to validate your idea. You go and post it to an existing community that you might think may be interested in it, and depending on the response, that can give you an indication of whether to push forward. So this feedback encouraged them to refine and enhance the tool and incorporating additional features suggested by the community. That is the other benefit there. You're going to get feedback on what you should actually build. You can spend 6 months in a room by yourself building a ton of features, but in reality, people might not want them at all. So if you're communicating with them at the get-go, you can learn what they're looking for. In terms of a timeline, it took them 18 months to go from 0 to 5,000 euros per month. And in terms of their marketing, their initial strategy including sharing the project on Twitter, but then they realized their customers weren't even on there. So they shifted their strategy to communities and forums where professionals and enthusiasts discussed video recordings and live recordings. They also used the product itself for self-promotion. They allowed users to share a link to their timer, and this gave them visibility, and it was effective in contexts like churches and small meetups where the Stagetimer branding became a part of the shared experience. They took this strategy from Dropbox for the referral. This was such a famous one where if you shared a Dropbox link to your referred account, they could get storage and you could get storage. So it led to this double incentive for you to share, and this gave them a ton of brand exposure. They also went and created really targeted landing pages. They conducted in-depth interviews with potential customers to understand their needs and concerns. This allowed them to craft messaging that truly resonated with these customer segments. So if we were to summarize them, getting to 5,000 euros in monthly recurring revenue, it involved a combination of product improvement, community engagement, referral strategies, organic word of mouth, customer interviews, and well-crafted landing pages. Taking a look at a SaaS called Busca next. They went from starting to being number 3 on Product Hunt in just 45 days. So what is this product? It's going to let you not miss any mention on your brand on different social media platforms such as Instagram, LinkedIn, Reddit, you name it. And it's going to organize everything nicely into a feed so you're not missing any potential conversations that you can have with customers. And so the inspiration behind this product was to give startups and small to medium-sized businesses an accessible platform to monitor their brand on autopilot. They're really targeting 3 things here. The first one is time saving, no more juggling between different platforms, efficiency, get a full view of your online presence, and lastly, to get peace of mind. So you're gonna get notified what's being said about you instantly so you don't have to search for it. For our third story, we're taking a look at Keep the Score. This product recently hit 10K a month in revenue. There's a bootstrapped side hustle here that makes it super easy for anyone to create scores or leaderboards. So let's take a look at a recap of how they got there so far. So in 2016, they coded and launched their product. And between 2016 and 2020, they worked on the product on nights and weekends using their spare time. and in 2020 they added monetization. And in March of 2021 they quit their job and went all in. So let's take a look at some of the lessons they learned along the way. The first one is that you need a validated idea to get started. And so for them, they started at what it looks like for your idea not to be validated at all. It's not validated if your mom says it's really good and she would totally buy your app, you manage to convince someone else to partner up with you, or if you have a waiting list with 500 email addresses. You're not really going to know from these. You really want to make sure that customers have either subscribed to it, they've submitted a prepayment, or they've gotten some kind of deal or early access. And this really validates it as they've pulled out their credit card and they've said, I want this product. Their second lesson is that you do not need venture capital. There is a strong narrative that the only way to build a product is with a massive injection of cash, and that's simply not true. They argue that a more sustainable route is to build a product first and prove it can make money. Their third lesson is don't follow your passion. This founder here is not passionate about scorekeeping and scoreboards, but they are passionate about solving problems, making customers happy and working on a product that has traction and telling stories. And so their advice is to just show up, be helpful, get feedback, be reliable, and don't give up too early. That brings them to their next lesson here, and is that there are no quick wins. So this chart comes from Barometrics, and you have here what everyone thinks will be happening, and that's just a huge skyrocket up, a hockey stick chart. And what actually happens is just slow and steady growth. But on a daily basis, it's going to be up and downs here. You're going to get new people coming in, you can have people leaving, but that will flatten out over time. But it's a long, slow grind. There are no quick wins, but it's one of those things with just pressure and sustaining it over time. If you're there for the long term, especially with SaaS and recurring revenue, you start to see growth. As if you can keep customers engaged, you can keep them using your product that is useful to them and they're happily willing to pay you for it. They'll stick around as long as their business is around, and you'll just keep on building up that recurring revenue. So for this founder, they focused on the strategy of SEO. They definitely underestimated this in the beginning, but we can look here at their metrics. They had 173,000 clicks with over 3 million impressions. And their recommendation is not to outsource this at the beginning because the quality won't be right. And they've gotten to the point where they used to dislike writing, but now they enjoy it. It's probably a positive feedback loop too, as they've seen a lot of success from it. The next lesson here is do stuff that moves the needle. From this founder's perspective, these are things that are not relevant. The first one is translating your app. Don't do this until you're well beyond 20K in monthly revenue. It's a ton of work, and there might be very little payoff if you don't have that many users. Next is launching a design and a new logo, going to conferences, and writing clean and elegant code. The customer only really cares about if you're solving their problem, so if these are doing it, then you should do it, but these tasks here aren't. And they're more things just to feel like you're making action and doing things, but it's probably not going to have that big of an impact. As a one-person show, you really don't have that much time either. And this founder has gotten really comfortable with leaving stuff unfinished and moving on to the next thing. As an example, this product didn't have a login or user accounts for over 3 years, yet it still grew, and they were able to integrate payment without a login. And once they did add a login, they waited 6 months just to add a password reset, as this wasn't really necessary for them at that time. They added it later there though, but they were really focusing on what was going to move the needle. Their seventh lesson is let customers pull you in different directions. You should be talking to your customers as much as possible. You already know that some of their ideas will be terrible, some of them will not fit your vision, some will be a solution for just an audience of one, and sometimes you will hear things that you don't outright understand. But then every once in a while, you're going to get those ideas that affect everyone and that push everything forward. For this founder, it was integrating OBS, which is a software used by streamers. And it turned out there were many hobby enthusiasts streaming their league games, their school sports, and their private matches. And it turns out these streams require the current score to be shown on the stream, and they realized their app is actually a pretty decent solution for that. And this gave the product so many use cases and has turned into a significant portion of their revenue as well. So an awesome bootstrap story there, and congratulations on the success. Next, we're going to take a look at a product called Podnotes that generated $12,000 in revenue in just 4 months with no ad spend. And they did so by selling lifetime deals on AppSumo. So Podnotes is a spin-off of Audio Notes, their note-taking tool, and they observed that a good number of people were using audio notes to transcribe their podcasts. So they tweaked that a little bit to build Podnotes, and then they went and launched it on AppSumo. So in terms of why they used AppSumo, it solves a distribution for SaaS companies in return, offers a great deal for their lifetime plans for their users. They wanted to improve the product and generate some initial capital, so AppSumo was a perfect fit for them. In terms of the good that they had from doing this, they got early users who have been instrumental in helping them improve the app, and generating that 12K in revenue was a huge bonus. AppSumo customers are also tough, but it's going to give you a lot of critical feedback, especially at the early stage. In terms of the bad from going this route, they had to offer lifetime deals for $49.98 and $147, whereas competitors were charging $15 a month. They also had to pay a 30% commission to AppSumo and also fund any additional discounts that are run by them. Users from AppSumo can also refund within 60 days, so they did find a percentage of users misusing the refund policy. The payouts also take 60 days, but overall, if they look at their reasons for doing AppSumo, gives you early users, which is so critical just to getting feedback. Some initial capital is also really nice as well, as you grow your recurring revenue over time. In terms of tips they have for using AppSumo, collect reviews from customers without violating the AppSumo guidelines. Make sure your customer support is great. Make sure you answer customers on the product page, and ask AppSumo team for features when you hit your review milestones. So let's go and take a look at their AppSumo listing. We can see it's 90% off on what it would cost normally. They have pretty good 29 reviews here, and overall it looks like they're doing quite well here. AppSumo is a giant marketplace for lifetime deals for software, so I can understand why they chose this route to get that early distribution and feedback. If you've gotten this far in the video, I'm sure you want to build your own SaaS product. There's a link in the description below where you can get free SaaS ideas. All you need to do is enter in your email. I also have a course on how to build your very own micro SaaS, even if you don't have any product ideas or any experience. There's a link for this in the description below as well. We'll be moving on to the founder, Andrew Pure now, who's built a suite of several apps here that generate $1 million in ARR. And he still isn't taking a salary from them, and he actually has a full-time job. So he's actually doing this as a side hustle, which is pretty awesome. So he has a full-time job at a small public company where he's the head of engineering in the Advanced Research Projects division. And so he has a portfolio of several SaaS products. So this amount of ARR is built up through several different product suites. You have Exo Capital, which is responsible for Screenshot, StreetBest, Analytics, Cold DM, Growth Bar, Journey.io. You also have SuperSend and Cold Email Studio. So that gives them total ARR of $972,000 a year. So Exo Capital generates $57,000 a month, Cold Email Studio generates $18,000, SuperSend generates $6,000, and he also had a previous AI exit that was a personally meaningful amount of money. So it's enough to buy a house, but not to retire. This was generated $20K in monthly recurring revenue just 7 months in, and he actually had no intention of selling it, but it was a big number, so he said yes. So it's also worth noting that to hit the 7 figures next year, they put in $600,000 to get there. They spent about $14,000 a month on contractors for Cold Email Studio and around $1.5 to $2.5 thousand for SuperSend. So in terms of how they went and acquired these companies, they started with Exo to get it up and running, and Andrew and his 2 co-founders each put in $7.5 thousand to buy their first company, which was bringing around $550 in MRR at the time. The second acquisition wasn't much bigger, and the third one was barely making 6 figures. So the size of the businesses they acquired increased linearly over time, with the first 10 coming from their own personal cash. But they ran out of money after buying number 10, so they created a fund and raised $550,000 for the most recent acquisition, Journey.io. They put in 10% of the capital themselves, and they had a 20% carry on the fund. And they did this as an experiment. They just wanted to see if this approach was going to work for them. And if it does, they could potentially raise 10 to 25 million in their fund for the future to go and buy larger businesses. So that's XO there. For Email Studio and SuperSend, they weren't bought or funded, they were both bootstrapped. So definitely a really awesome story here on how they went and acquired different companies. They've built and bootstrapped different companies themselves. This has created them a really nice portfolio here that looks to be continuing to grow. And for most people, you'd probably see them leave their full-time job and manage all their portfolio companies. But Andrew actually does both, still keeping his full-time job while doing this as a side hustle. For our last story here, we'll take a look at a founder named Anthony who went from being laid off to creating a SaaS and generating $8K a month in recurring revenue with their productized service. So they were originally working in crypto, but then they got hit with the market crash, so they had to move on. So they went and launched a productized service. So they got inspiration this from Design Joy, and so their productized service is called Liberto.dev, and they generate $8K a month in recurring revenue. And what's great about this for the founder is that it's the feeling of being their own boss that is truly priceless. And they also went and launched Brew, and it's a simple platform, but they're proud of it here, and it helps you create and manage productized services. It essentially reproduces Design Joy's workflow, but from a single place, so you never need any of the manual actions. So we take a look at it here, so you can productize yourself, earn more with what you're good at. And so anyone can generate recurring income online. People need your skills, let them subscribe to you, and it's that easy. So they took the frustrations and probably all the problems they learned along the way of doing it themselves and went and turned it into a product. You can get detailed task requests, subscription management, and you can make it your own. So there we have it. We went through 6 different stories here. So hopefully you learned a ton of lessons along the way. It's awesome to hear from indie hackers and their successes. Comment below which story was the most impactful to you. I'd love to find out. Also, if you haven't, smash that like and subscribe button below. I'm coming up with SaaS educational videos all the time, just like this one. This is going to help you up your game, and I post 3 times a week, so you don't want to miss out. But this ends the video here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.